He became America's most beloved actor, not through scandal or spectacle, but through something the world had almost forgotten how to recognize: genuine kindness. While Hollywood chased headlines and controversy, one man quietly chose a different path, a path that would make him not just famous, but treasured. This is the story of how Tom Hanks became the person we all wish existed in our own lives. There's a photograph that exists somewhere in the depths of the internet. It's grainy, unplanned, taken by someone's trembling hands outside a coffee shop in Los Angeles. In it, you'll see a middle-aged man in jeans and a simple shirt, crouched down on the sidewalk, talking to a homeless veteran. The man isn't posing, he isn't aware of the camera. He's simply listening, his hand on the veteran's shoulder, his face showing nothing but complete attention and respect. That man is Tom Hanks. And that moment, like thousands of others scattered across his 6-decade journey, tells you everything you need to know about who he really is when the cameras aren't rolling. Except, in this case, the cameras caught him anyway. They always do, because kindness, real kindness, has a way of making itself known. But Tom Hanks wasn't born into kindness. He was born into chaos. The year was 1956. Eisenhower was president. Elvis was changing music forever. And in Concord, California, a little boy named Thomas Jeffrey Hanks entered a world that would immediately begin teaching him about loss, adaptation, and the art of finding light in darkness. His parents divorced when he was only 5 years old. In an era when divorce carried heavy stigma, when families were expected to stay together no matter what, Tom found himself suddenly navigating a fractured home. His father, Amos, was a traveling cook. His mother, Janet, struggled with her own demons. Tom and his siblings were shuffled between homes, between parents, between step-parents and half-siblings, creating a childhood that felt less like a foundation and more like constantly shifting sand. By the time Tom was 10 years old, he had lived in 10 different houses, 10 different bedrooms, 10 different first days of school where he was the new kid again, trying to figure out how to fit in, how to make friends, how to feel like he belonged somewhere, anywhere. Imagine being that child, walking into a new classroom, feeling dozens of eyes turned toward you, knowing you have no history here, no friends, no safe place to sit at lunch. Imagine doing that over and over again, each time having to reinvent yourself, to figure out who you need to be to survive in this new environment. Some kids would have broken under that pressure. Some would have become angry, defensive, closed off from the world. Tom took a different path entirely. Each new school became a laboratory for understanding human nature. He watched how groups formed, how hierarchies developed, how kindness or cruelty could change the entire atmosphere of a room. He learned to read micro-expressions, to sense when someone was having a bad day, to understand the unspoken rules that governed social interaction. He became a student of humanity long before he ever stepped on a stage. And he learned something else, something that would define his entire life. Humor could transform pain into connection. When you're the new kid and you can make the class laugh, suddenly you're not an outsider anymore. You're someone people want to sit with at lunch. Tom discovered early that making people smile was a kind of magic, a way to turn strangers into friends, to diffuse tension, to make difficult situations bearable. But beneath the humor, beneath the adaptability, there was also loneliness. There were nights when young Tom lay in yet another unfamiliar bed and yet another temporary home, wondering where he really belonged. There were moments when he watched other kids with their stable families, their permanent bedrooms, their childhood friends they'd known since kindergarten, and felt the weight of everything he didn't have. Most children who experience this kind of instability develop armor. They build walls. They learn not to trust too easily, not to open up too quickly, because people leave and places change and nothing is permanent. Tom learned something different. He learned to adapt. He learned to read people. He learned that humor could bridge gaps that nothing else could. And most importantly, he learned empathy. When you've been the outsider enough times, you start to recognize other outsiders. You start to see the kid sitting alone at lunch, the elderly neighbor who never gets visitors, the person everyone else walks past without noticing. You start to understand that everyone is carrying something heavy, And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is simply acknowledge their existence. Tom didn't know it then, but his chaotic childhood was building the very foundation of the man who would later become America's dad. The man who would play everyman heroes, not because he was acting, but because he understood what it meant to be overlooked, underestimated, and constantly trying to find your place in the world. High school brought a glimmer of stability, and with it a discovery that would change everything. Theater. The stage became Tom's first real home. Not a physical house that he'd have to leave in 6 months, but a space where he could transform, where he could become someone else, where he could make people laugh and cry and feel something real. He joined the drama program at Skyline High School in Oakland, and for the first time in his young life, he found something that felt like belonging. His drama teacher saw something in him, that indefinable quality that separates people who perform from people who transform. Tom wasn't the most classically handsome guy in the room. He wasn't the most naturally gifted athlete or the smoothest talker. But when he stepped on stage, something shifted. He became present. He became real. He became someone you wanted to watch, to root for, to believe in. After high school, Tom attended Shabbat College in Hayward, then transferred to California State University in Sacramento to study theater. These weren't prestigious drama schools. Tom wasn't training at Juilliard or Yale. He was a regular guy going to regular schools, working regular jobs to pay his way through, including a stint selling peanuts at Oakland Coliseum. He was learning his craft the hard way, through community theater productions and student plays, making mistakes and learning from them, developing his skills one performance at a time. But even then, even as an actor, people who worked with Tom remember something distinctive about him. He was kind. He was professional. He showed up on time. He knew everyone's name. He helped build sets and hang lights and do whatever was needed, never acting like any job was beneath him. He treated the janitor with the same respect he treated the director. These weren't calculated moves to advance his career. This was simply who he was. The early 1980s brought Tom to New York City, where he did what thousands of aspiring actors do. He auditioned, he waited tables, he lived in a tiny apartment, he faced rejection after rejection after rejection. Then how he faced it. While other actors grew bitter or desperate or jaded, Tom maintained something rare in that cutthroat environment. Optimism. Not blind optimism, but the kind that comes from genuinely believing that good things happen to good people if you just keep showing up and doing your best. His first break came not on Broadway, but in a cross-dressing sitcom called Bosom Buddies. The premise was ridiculous. 2 guys dress as women to afford an apartment in an all-female building. It was 1980, and the show was exactly as absurd as it sounds. But Tom brought something to it that elevated the comedy beyond cheap jags: humanity. Even in a dress and a wig, even in the silliest situations, Tom's character felt real, felt relatable, felt like someone you might actually know and care about. The show only lasted 2 seasons, but it put Tom on the map. Hollywood started paying attention. And then came the movies. Splash in 1984 was supposed to be a silly romantic comedy about a man who falls in love with a mermaid. Instead, it became a sweet, genuine love story that made over $60 million and proved Tom Hanks could carry a film. The chemistry between Tom and Daryl Hannah felt real because Tom brought emotional authenticity even to the most fantastical premise. He played a man falling in love, and whether his love interest had legs or a tail became almost irrelevant because the emotion was so genuine. Then came Bachelor Party, a raunchy comedy that could have been forgettable, but wasn't because Tom played even the wildest situations with an underlying sweetness. Then came Big, the film that should have defined him as a comedy star forever. In Big, Tom played a 12-year-old boy trapped in an old's body, and he did it so convincingly, with such pure joy and wonder, that the film became a cultural phenomenon. Watch him dance on the giant piano keyboard at FAO Schwartz, and you're not watching acting. You're watching someone who remembered exactly what it felt like to be a kid, who could access that innocence and playfulness without a trace of cynicism. But here's what people didn't see at the time. Tom was already getting restless with being typecast. He was grateful for the success, grateful for the comedy roles that made him a household name, grateful that he could provide for his family and build a career. But there was a part of him that wanted to explore deeper waters, to tell stories that mattered on a different level, to use his growing platform for something more than just entertainment.
Turner and Hooch came next, a buddy cop comedy where his co-star was a dog. The Money Pit had him battling a falling-apart house in increasingly absurd situations. Joe versus the Volcano took a risk with magical realism that didn't quite land with audiences, but showed Tom's willingness to try unconventional projects. A League of Their Own let him play a has-been alcoholic baseball coach finding redemption, giving audiences their first real glimpse of Tom's dramatic range. Sleepless in Seattle proved he could carry a romantic drama with grace and genuine emotion. Tom was becoming the go-to guy for likable everymen in comedic situations. He was charming without being slick, funny without being mean, relatable without being boring, successful without being threatening. He was the guy you'd want as a neighbor, as a friend, as a brother. But there was a problem. Tom Hanks wanted to do more than make people laugh. He wanted to make them feel. He wanted to tell stories that mattered, and Hollywood wasn't sure he could. The turning point came in 1993 with a film called Philadelphia. Tom was offered the role of Andrew Beckett, a lawyer dying of AIDS who sues his firm for discrimination. This was career suicide, or so everyone told him. AIDS was still heavily stigmatized. Playing a gay character could typecast him forever. The film was risky, controversial, and likely to alienate audiences. Every agent in Hollywood would have advised against it. Tom said yes immediately. Not because it was a smart career move, not because he thought it would win him awards, though it would, but because it was the right story to tell. Because people were dying and being discriminated against and losing everything, and someone needed to help audiences see their humanity. Tom understood something fundamental. His platform as an actor wasn't just about entertaining people. It was about opening hearts. When Tom won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Philadelphia, he gave a speech that would become legendary. He thanked his high school drama teacher, Raleigh Farnsworth, and his former classmate, John Gilkerson, both gay men who had impacted his life. In 1994, on national television at the height of his career, Tom Hanks used his moment of triumph to honor the LGBTQ community and advocate for compassion and understanding. That speech was more than just words. It was a statement about who he was choosing to be. He could have played it safe, given a generic thank you speech, avoided anything controversial. Instead, he used the biggest moment of his career to stand up for people who were being marginalized, discriminated against, and literally dying while much of society looked away. He risked alienating audiences. He risked his career momentum. He did it anyway because it was right. The impact of Philadelphia and that speech rippled far beyond Hollywood. Families who had been avoiding conversations about AIDS suddenly had a way in. People living with HIV saw themselves represented with dignity and humanity for perhaps the first time. The film didn't cure prejudice, but it opened doors. It started conversations. It reminded audiences that behind every statistic was a human being with hopes and fears and people who loved them. The next year, he won again, this time for Forrest Gump. 2 consecutive Best Actor Oscars, a feat matched by only a handful of actors in history. Spencer Tracy had done it. Tom Hanks had now done it. He was no longer just a comedy guy. He was a serious artist, a transformative performer, someone who could make you laugh and break your heart in the same scene. Forrest Gump became a cultural phenomenon in ways no one predicted. The film grossed over $678 million worldwide. Its quotes became part of everyday language. Life is like a box of chocolates. Stupid is as stupid does. Run, Forrest, run! But beyond the catchphrases, the film touched something deep in the American psyche. It told the story of a simple man with a good heart navigating complex times. And in Tom's hands, Forrest Gump became not a joke, but a mirror, reflecting back our own capacity for goodness, perseverance, and unconditional love. Tom's acceptance speech for Forrest Gump was different from his Philadelphia speech, but no less powerful. He was emotional, genuine, clearly overwhelmed by the recognition and the moment. There was no arrogance, no sense of entitlement, just gratitude and humility and a visible awareness of how fortunate he was. Even in his greatest triumph, Tom Hanks remained Tom Hanks, grounded. But here's what's remarkable. Success didn't change him, not in the ways it changes most people. There's a story that Robert Zemeckis, who directed Forrest Gump, tells about the production. The film was running over budget, way over budget. Were more expensive than anticipated, and the studio was getting nervous. Tom had already been paid his salary, already had his Oscar from Philadelphia, already had nothing to lose by walking away or demanding more money or playing hardball. Instead, Tom did something unprecedented. He deferred his salary, taking a percentage of the box office instead to help the film get made properly. That decision ended up making him around $40 million when Forrest Gump became one of the highest-grossing films of all time. But that's not why the story matters. It matters because Tom didn't know the film would be successful. He just knew it was important to him, and he was willing to sacrifice guaranteed money to see it completed properly. He bet on art instead of certainty. He bet on the story instead of himself. This kind of decision would define Tom's career again and again. When offered the role of Captain Miller in Saving Ryan Pryor, Tom took a pay cut so Spielberg could make the film the way he envisioned it. The result was one of the most powerful war films ever made, a brutal, honest depiction of D-Day and its aftermath that honored the sacrifice of an entire generation. Tom's performance as the weary, principled captain became the emotional anchor of the film. His final words, "Earned this," became a reminder of the weight that survivors carry, the debt we owe to those who gave everything. When working on Castaway, Tom agreed to an unusual arrangement where he'd film the first half, take a year off to lose 50 pounds and grow out his hair and beard, then return to film the second half, trusting in a process that most actors would have found absurd. That year off wasn't a vacation, it was a commitment to authenticity. Tom transformed his body, suffered through the weight loss, lived with the discomfort and hunger, all to make sure that when audiences watched Chuck Nolan stranded on that island, they believed every moment of his physical and psychological deterioration. The film required Tom to carry most of the runtime essentially alone, with only a volleyball named Wilson as his companion. There were 20-minute stretches with no dialogue, just Tom acting with his eyes, his body language, his desperate attempts to maintain his humanity in isolation. It was a masterclass in screen acting, proving that Tom didn't need witty dialogue or scene partners to captivate an audience. He just needed to be present, to be truthful, to let the camera see into the soul of a man losing everything and fighting to survive. After Castaway came more deliberate choices. The Green Mile, where Tom played a death row corrections officer witnessing a miracle. Road to Perdition, a stylized mob drama where Tom played a hitman seeking redemption and trying to protect his son. Catch Me If You Can, reuniting with Spielberg to chase Leonardo DiCaprio's charming con artist across the country. The Terminal, living in an airport terminal in bureaucratic limbo. The Da Vinci Code, wading into religious controversy with a blockbuster thriller. Angels and Demons, Larry Crowne, extremely loud and incredibly close. Cloud Atlas, a wildly ambitious experiment in storytelling spanning centuries. Some of these films worked better than others. Some were commercial hits, some critical darlings, some neither. But each choice revealed something about Tom's priorities. He worked with directors he admired on stories that interested him in roles that challenged him in different ways. He wasn't chasing paychecks or trying to maintain some carefully curated image. He was following his artistic instincts, even when they led him to risky or unconventional places. The later films continued this pattern. Bridge of Spies, a Cold War thriller about negotiation and principle. Sully, playing the pilot who landed a plane on the Hudson River and saved every passenger. The Post, fighting for press freedom in the Pentagon Papers case. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, playing Mr. Rogers with such tender respect that audiences wept. News of the World, a Western about an unlikely protector and his young charge. Elvis, playing Colonel Tom Parker in Baz Luhrmann's glittering biopic. Each role different, each challenge unique, each choice reflecting Tom's continued desire to grow, to stretch, to serve stories that mattered to him. But he's also remained grounded in the small, everyday acts that define a life. He still types his own tweets on an actual typewriter and posts photos of them. He still collects vintage typewriters and donates them to be auctioned for charity. He still stops to talk to fans, still remembers names, still treats every interaction as though it matters because, to him, it does. Tom's marriage to Rita Wilson is another testament to his character. In Hollywood, where marriages last about as long as movie premieres, where relationships are treated as disposable as soon as the cameras stop flashing, Tom and Rita have been together since 1988. They met on the set of Bosom Buddies, though they didn't start dating until later when they reunited on the set of Volunteers. They fell in love, got married, and built something real in a town that specializes in illusion.
Their relationship isn't perfect, because no relationship is, but it's genuine. You see it in how they look at each other at premieres, not the practiced poses of celebrity couples, but real affection and partnership. You hear it in how Tom talks about Rita in interviews, with respect and admiration and humor. You see it in how Rita talks about Tom, not as a trophy husband or a career boost, but as her partner, her best friend, the person she chose and continues to choose every single day. When Rita was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, Tom didn't shy away or let handlers manage the situation or hide behind carefully worded statements. He was there, visibly, publicly supporting her, advocating for cancer research, being the partner she needed. Rita has spoken about how Tom was her rock during treatment, how he made her laugh even on the hardest days, how he showed up in all the small ways that matter most. This wasn't a celebrity marriage surviving a crisis through distance and PR management. This was a real partnership facing something terrifying together. When both Tom and Rita contracted COVID-19 in early 2020, becoming some of the first major celebrities to test positive when the virus was still poorly understood and deeply frightening, they could have panicked or hidden or demanded special treatment. Instead, they were transparent, sharing their experience honestly, encouraging people to take the virus seriously without spreading fear, and demonstrating grace under uncertainty. Tom's messages from quarantine in Australia were characteristically warm, humorous, and reassuring. He posted photos of toast he'd burned, of games they were playing to pass time, of the small domestic moments that reminded everyone that even movie stars were just people trying to get through this strange, scary time. Even facing a global pandemic in a foreign country, he found ways to lift others up. His children have followed in his footsteps, not just in career but in character. Colin Hanks has built his own successful acting career while maintaining his father's reputation for professionalism and kindness. Elizabeth Ann Hanks became a writer and editor, carving her own path outside her father's shadow. Both have spoken about growing up with a father who was famous, but never let fame define him. A father who came to school events even when it meant dealing with crowds of other parents wanting autographs, who helped with homework even after 18-hour days on set, who treated them like people rather than accessories to his celebrity, who taught them that kindness isn't weakness, and that how you treat people when no one is watching is the true measure of character. Tom's son Chet has had his struggles, battling addiction and making headlines for the wrong reasons at times. Rather than distance himself or issue carefully worded statements through lawyers, rather than pretending his son's struggles didn't exist or trying to use his influence to make problems disappear, he has remained a supportive, present father, demonstrating that love doesn't come with conditions. He's shown up for Chet again and again, not enabling destructive behavior, but also not abandoning his son when things got hard. It's a reminder that even people who seem to have perfect lives face real challenges, and that showing up for family, even when it's complicated, even when it's messy, is part of being human. In 2023, Tom published his first novel, The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece, a sprawling, detailed love letter to the film industry. Critics noted its insider knowledge, its warmth, its genuine affection for the craft of storytelling. What they really noticed was how much it revealed about Tom's own approach to his work: collaborative, humble, deeply respectful of every single person who contributes to a film's creation, from the A-list director to the craft services worker.
The book wasn't just entertainment, it was an education in how films get made, written by someone who genuinely loves every aspect of the process. Tom could have written a memoir full of gossip and behind-the-scenes drama. He could have named names and settled scores and capitalized on his insider status. Instead, he wrote a love letter to collaboration, to teamwork, to the magic that happens when hundreds of people work together toward a common creative goal. Even in fiction, Tom's kindness and respect for others shines through. Beyond his creative work, Tom has used his platform for causes that matter to him. He's been a vocal supporter of veterans, donating time and money to organizations that help those who served. He's narrated documentaries about World War II, ensuring that the stories of that generation don't fade from memory. He's advocated for space exploration, for the arts, for education, for medical research. He's used his voice not to promote himself, but to amplify important issues and organizations doing meaningful work. When natural disasters strike, Tom quietly donates. When communities need support, he shows up. When political moments require moral clarity, he speaks out, not with partisan rancor, but with calls for decency, compassion, and unity. He's leveraged his universal likability not to stay safely neutral, but to advocate for treating people with dignity and respect. In an increasingly polarized culture, Tom Hanks has remained a figure that almost everyone can agree on, not because he avoids taking stands, but because his stands are rooted in fundamental human values that transcend political tribalism. He's received countless honors beyond his Oscars: Presidential Medals of Freedom, Kennedy Center honors, Lifetime Achievement Awards from virtually every organization in the entertainment industry. But ask Tom about his proudest moments, he'll talk about his family, about roles that mattered to him personally, about making someone smile who needed it. The accolades are nice, but they're not what drives him. What drives him is the work itself and the connections it creates between people. Because that's the thing about Tom Hanks. He doesn't see a hierarchy of human value. He doesn't think his Oscar wins make him more important than the person serving him coffee or driving his car or cleaning his house. He's managed to achieve the rarest thing in Hollywood. He's remained human. There's a reason Tom Hanks has become the go-to answer for which celebrity would you most want to have dinner with, or which celebrity would you trust in an emergency, or which celebrity actually seems like a good person. It's not just his roles, though those certainly help. It's that decades of consistent, witnessed, documented kindness have built a reputation that even the most cynical among us struggle to dismiss. Think about what that means in today's world. In an era where every celebrity eventually has scandals emerge, where social media exposes everyone's worst moments, where cancel culture scrutinizes every past mistake with ruthless efficiency, Tom Hanks remains untouched. Not because he's perfect, no one is perfect, but because he's genuinely kind. Not because he's never made mistakes, but because he's approached life with humility, accountability, and grace. Not because he has better PR than everyone else, but because his public persona and his private character are actually aligned. When the Me Too movement swept through Hollywood, exposing decades of abuse and misconduct, revealing that many of our heroes were actually predators, Tom's name never appeared on any list, in any whispered conversation, in any hushed allegation. When former co-workers are interviewed, they universally describe him as respectful, professional, and kind. Female co-stars talk about how safe they felt working with him, how he advocated for them behind the scenes, how he used his power to protect rather than exploit. When directors discuss working with him, they talk about his generosity, his preparation, his commitment to making everyone's job easier, his willingness to do whatever serves the story, even if it makes him look bad. Young actors talk about how Tom mentored them, not in a formal way, but through example and occasional gentle guidance. Crew members share stories of Tom learning their names, asking about their families, treating wrap parties like reunions with friends rather than obligations with staff. Assistants who worked with him years ago still speak of him with genuine affection, not the fake praise of people protecting their careers, but real warmth for someone who treated them like human beings. This isn't an accident. This isn't luck. This is a choice Tom has made every single day of his life. A choice to be patient when patience is hard, to be kind when kindness isn't convenient, to be generous when generosity costs him something, to be present when presence would be easier to fake, to be humble when the world is telling him he's special, to be grateful when he could take everything for granted, to be real when artifice would be simpler. There's a speech Tom gave at a college graduation that reveals so much about his philosophy. He didn't lecture the graduates about hustle or success or achieving their dreams through determination and grit. He didn't tell them they could be anything they wanted if they just believed in themselves hard enough. Instead, he told them to show up on time, to know everyone's name, to treat every person with respect, from the janitor to the CEO, to understand that the smallest kindnesses often matter most. He told them that talent matters, but character matters more. That you can be the most gifted person in the room, but if you're difficult to work with, if you're unkind, if you make others feel small, none of that talent will ultimately matter. This advice sounds simple, almost too simple for a commencement speech, but it's revolutionary. In a culture that worships genius, that excuses bad behavior if someone is talented enough, that tells us we should prioritize our own success above all else, that celebrates the myth of the tortured artist and the difficult genius, Tom Hanks is quietly advocating for something different. He's saying that how you treat people, especially people who can't do anything for you, is the measure of your worth. He's saying that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the hardest, bravest thing you can choose. He's saying that success built on other people's suffering isn't success. It's just selfishness wrapped in achievement.
And he's proved this philosophy through his own life, demonstrating that you don't have to be ruthless to succeed. You don't have to be cruel to be powerful. You don't have to sacrifice your humanity to achieve your dreams. In fact, maintaining your humanity, treating people well, building genuine relationships based on mutual respect. These things don't hinder success. They enhance it. They make success meaningful. They make success sustainable. They make success something you can look back on with pride rather than regret. Tom is now in his late 60s, and if anything, his commitment to kindness has only deepened. He's spoken about his diabetes diagnosis with characteristic humor, turning a personal challenge into an opportunity to educate. He's supported countless charities, used his voice to amplify important issues, all while remaining grounded in small, everyday acts of decency. There's a quote attributed to Tom that captures his philosophy. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. Being kind is hard. Being patient is hard. Being humble when the world tells you you're special is hard. Tom Hanks has chosen the hard path, the kind path, every single day for nearly 70 years. In a world that often feels dark and divided, Tom Hanks stands as a reminder that good people exist. Not perfect people, but people who try every day to be kinder, more patient, more understanding. People who see others as fellow humans deserving of dignity. Tom's favorite role isn't any character that won him awards. It's being a husband, a father, a friend. It's the life he's built away from cameras, the quiet moments that never make headlines. That's where his real performance happens, in the daily choice to show up as his best self. When historians look back at this era, they'll note Tom's performances and awards, but what will endure is how he made people feel. The fan whose photo he took, the veteran he stopped to talk with, the student whose ID he returned, the child who met their hero and found someone even better. Tom Hanks didn't set out to become America's dad. He simply decided to be kind and never stopped. Even when it was hard, even when no one was watching, that decision, repeated across decades, created something remarkable. A life that inspires not because it's perfect, but because it's genuinely good. His greatest role isn't in any movie. It's being a decent human trying to leave the world better than he found it. In an industry built on illusion, that authenticity stands out like a beacon. Tom Hanks proves you can reach the highest heights while keeping your feet on the ground. You can be universally admired while remaining humble. You can be powerful while staying connected to what matters: kindness, compassion, and common decency. Tom Hanks is still everyone's favorite nice guy, not because he's played nice characters, but because he's lived a nice life. He's shown us that kindness isn't naive or weak. It's powerful. It's transformative. It's the most authentic form of strength we have. He doesn't play heroes. He chooses every day to be one. And in doing so, he's given us all permission to do the same. If this story reminded you that kindness still exists, subscribe to Quiet Fame for more journeys into the lives of people who chose character over fame and humanity over everything else.